Airline passengers, as we said earlier, have really paid the price too. 2,900 flights canceled. So many other people stranded for 10 hours within sight of the airport gates.
First 5 months of the year, more than a quarter of all flights were delayed, the worst on record. In June, delays up 18% over last year. The average delay, 51 minutes, 27 seconds, 5 minutes longer than a year ago. But passenger rights advocates say the numbers are misleading because if a plane sits for hours, then cancels, it's not counted as a delay.
There were 800,000 plus cancellations last year for which no time on the tarmac data is gathered by the government. Those are astronomical numbers.
And the figures don't reflect a passenger's total trip delay, missed connections, and overnight stays.
And you actually, I mean, we can show a list here of what you found to have the most tarmac delays, American Airlines, United, and U.S. Airways.
Yes.
That's a particular concern, getting stuck in a plane on the tarmac.
Well, yeah, actually departing from the gate with the full knowledge by management that you're not going anywhere for 3 or 4 hours before takeoff is a deceptive business practice.
Section 41712 of Title 49 of the U.S. Code. It deals with unfair and deceptive practices.
Kate, the story from JetBlue and the others back on Valentine's Day was that in most cases they were making the decisions they were making with good intentions. Do you think that's true?
No.
Do you think that, I mean, do we really need the federal government to be stepping in and doing this? Shouldn't the airlines, the industry as a whole, take this on themselves?
Baloney! If you don't exercise oversight, they're going to continue to do stuff that the public doesn't want.
They are lying. They actually know when they will or won't make it to a destination, and what they're trying to do is hold on to the revenue. They don't want to.
It's always about the buck.
It's always about the dollar. In our case, they wanted to resume our flights the next morning so that they wouldn't have to give us back the money for the unused portion of our flights and then pay for our hotel rooms that night. And we were in the wrong city.
I mean, we're paying more and more, and we're getting less and less.
Now, they told you this was a weather-related issue, right? 3 days before, there was a bad weather
3 days before there was weather.
It was 3 days, 72 on flights ahead of us that had been there for 72 hours.
See, that's the caveat in the airline's contract of carriage. If they can say it's a weather-related event, they don't have to compensate.
But they told them on the way to the airport the flight was on time and the flight was fine.
I know.
And then there's the last thing that no one has control of, and that's the weather.
Baloney!
Our largest problem is the air traffic control infrastructure has not been modernized in decades.
Baloney!
The airlines have had the opportunity to address this issue and in fact committed to doing so back in 1999. And obviously the bottom line is that either they're going to address the problem or we are.
No one should be held hostage for 8 or 9 hours on a tarmac. There's got to be some reasonable way to get people off of those airplanes. And for the time that they're on the airplanes, they ought to be able to have access to clean air, a reasonable temperature, clean water, and some sort of food.
Yeah, I understand.
We're not asking for a lot here.
Just real quick, when are you going to introduce this legislation?
I'm going to introduce the bill next week. We've already had a lot of interest from colleagues, of a number of people who want to co-author the bill, and as you mentioned before, there's companion legislation in the Senate, and I think this is going to just create a better traveling situation for everyone concerned.
And that's why we are saying now that our passenger Bill of Rights needs to be a condition of the FAA reauthorization bill, and that Congress must step forward.
Hey, where's the beef?
Lived in a brownstone, lived in a ghetto. I've lived all over this town. This ain't no party, this ain't no disco, this ain't no fooling around. No time for dancing, for lovey-dovey. I ain't got time for that now. Transmit the message to the receiver.
To assure the Passengers' Bill of Rights won't be dropped from the aviation bill, consumers must sound off to Congress now.
They need to call them and they need to say, please pass passenger rights language that's meaningful.
Now, there's no excuse for this kind of incompetence by the airline companies. Bad weather's always with us. Other countries around the world have worse weather. But there is a pattern of behavior that abuses airline customers in America. We all know it, and it must stop. If the government will not step in, then class action litigation must begin. Like oil and gas, Americans often have to use the airlines. They must fly, just like we must have fuel. Over the years, the performance of the airlines has dropped dramatically. They've cut employees and salaries, cut services, and even cut civility. When they go bankrupt, as they often do, we taxpayers pick up the tabs. As the airlines skip out on debts and reorganize to come back, even worse than before. It's not the fault of the individual airline worker, who is often under siege. There aren't nearly enough people working to handle the crowds. The flight crews are the best in the world. Accidents are rare. It is the management that is abusing people, and the government must step in and force standards of decent behavior on these airline companies. It should be against the law to keep anyone on a non-flying plane for more than 2 hours. That is cruel and unusual punishment, especially when children are involved. All of us who fly have horror stories, but enough's enough. No excuses anymore. The system's broken, and if the federal government will not demand performance, then we, the people, must, by suing the airline companies until they can't see. No more airline abuse, period.